All right, Steeler fans, it is time. Friday's Let's Ride podcast, the first half. You know what we do? We go behind enemy lines, and it's the Browns again. And joining us is John Suchan again of the Fanatical Elves podcast network right here on Fans First Sports Network. John, I know you're not excited to be here, but I'm excited to have you. How are you? How's everything going, my friend?
Well, it's been one of those days for Browns fans. You know, we have a lot of these. It's like it's our history. It's part of being a Browns fan is this up and down roller coaster of
Yeah.
feeling an emotion, and we can't seem to rid ourselves of it.
But that's
So
the truth. I mean, when you think about the Browns season, like in put it into a capsule right now, so far going into week 11, talk about a roller coaster when you talk about you win an opening day. I think you win in
mhm.
week 1, yes, and then
Yes,
you lose to the Steelers in a really weird way and prime time, and then you find your way navigating these waters and beating the undefeated 49ers at home,
hmm
and you
hmm
shut out the Cardinals, and then everything looks good. You come back and beat the Ravens, and then smacked in the face with the news that Deshaun Watson season is over. I just want to ask what your knee-jerk reaction was when you heard the news that Watson is done. I mean, I didn't even know that he was injured in the game in
no,
Baltimore, and let
no one
alone
did. No one
no one.
did. And
That's insane.
no, and it shocked everybody. Every beat writer here in Cleveland, guys like Tony Grossi, Mary Kay Cabot, nobody knew. Nobody knew. And to the Browns organizations, they are been good at keeping things under wraps. This group, I think they've done a pretty good job. It's just so. I mean, my initial reaction has been, shock and awe. I think most Browns fans are. It's not quite the same as Nick Chubb's injury against you
Yeah.
guys back in week 2, but the thing it's just so bizarre about all of this is that it's the whole season has been a roller coaster with Deshaun and him being mysteriously out, and how injured was the shoulder, and was it a physical injury? Was there some mental side to thing? We've talked about that over the course of the season as Browns fans. Obviously, he's now suffered this serious injury. There's been a variety of takes today. I don't know. I think there was a specific play in the second quarter where I think he did get kind of jammed by two Ravens that some people are saying is when it happened. The interesting other part of that the game itself was that everybody was upset with his play in the first half, and then he turned it around in the second half
Yeah.
after the supposed injury and went 14 for 14 and led them on just a great comeback. And yeah, so it's really just devastating. We've played without Deshaun, but now we're getting to this point where we know that he's out.
Yeah.
And PJ Walker had come to the rescue, had gone, 3-1, I think, in his, or 2 and
Mhm.
1. But now there are, the indications are that DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, will be the starter. The Browns have announced that earlier this afternoon. So lots to dissect there. I'm sure we can talk about that.
We
But
will. We will.
yeah,
But I want to ask you quickly about Deshaun Watson, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Maybe this was made public, maybe it wasn't. Was this an injury that was either did it stem from the other shoulder injury, or is this something completely
it's a
different?
great question. Great question. I haven't heard publicly today. I've been busy doing my other jobs in my
I
life,
get
but
it. Yeah.
I there have not been, well, at least my social media following all of that, there hasn't been a lot of conversation about that specific question.
Mm.
But I certainly, like every other Browns fan, has thought,
Yeah.
well, he had a shoulder injury and then he got popped. So obviously, I mean, your shoulder, all of that whole area is very sensitive and
For
things can
sure.
happen. And he certainly, obviously he had some sort of shoulder issue. Some of us, even myself, got kind of into the mental side of football after a while because he was gone so long. So, and like you said, it's like you get him back, and the way that game against Baltimore started last weekend was just awful. It was very eerily similar to how you guys in the Steeler Nation beat us in week 2 with Deshaun threw an interception like on the first pass.
Yeah.
Um, the Ravens went up 14-0, and there was 12 and a half minutes to go in the first quarter. So, yeah, it was. So the fact that he was able to help them along with his, Kevin Stefanski's coaching and the Browns' great defense, they really came to play. Things turn around. So it is really just no one knew. I mean, today it
Yeah.
was when I first saw text messages coming through to my phone at what, like 8 or 9 this morning. It was like, what? And I think everybody had that same reaction.
I
So,
had that reaction as a Steeler fan. I was like, wow, like this is totally blindsiding. So let's go to the next logical point here, and that is, why would they go with DTR over PJ Walker? And that's, I think, a fair question. DTR did start early in the season when Deshaun
yeah.
Watson was out, and he didn't fare too well against the Baltimore Ravens. However, PJ Walker, like you said, had a winning record. He did turn the ball over a good bit, but
Mhm.
he was keeping them afloat. I kind of
Yeah.
make that similarity or the comparison to Tyler Huntley
Yeah.
in Baltimore.
That's a
Lamar
good
goes
observation. Yeah.
Lamar goes out. Tyler Huntley can come in and win you some games. He's not going to go out and win the Super Bowl, but he can win you some games. What do you think the Browns organization is thinking going to Dorian Thompson-Robinson instead of PJ Walker? Not that but what's your take?
My take, okay, so go back to the game when they inserted him into the Baltimore home game that first time. That was leading up to that game. We saw Deshaun Watson warming up. You know, all the eyes were on him. Everybody assumed that he was going to roll with it. And according to all observations and information I got back, uh, DTR didn't find out that he was actually going to start that game until like literally at like 11 o'clock that morning. And
Jeez.
though they had prepped him in some practice, I don't think they prepped him. Now what they're saying today is that they are giving him a week's worth of prep, and well, it's Wednesday, but so yeah, I don't like this part of the Browns organization and their thinking sometimes because they threw him to the wolves in that first game, and he looked just awful, and he was making a lot of mistakes. Then they roll with PJ Walker, like you said, and like he was making some turnovers himself, but he has that veteran presence, and I was buying into it. I kept, there's a lot of criticism about all the turnovers, but I kept coming back on our shows and saying, look, the guy's winning. When needed, he came through in the clutch twice in two different games against the 49ers. PJ Walker came back and whatnot. And then the next game. Yeah, I think that the DTR right now, the whole concept for me is that they had Josh Dobbs in Cleveland at the beginning of the
Right.
time, and then they made a decision as an organization that DTR had done enough because in those preseason games, DTR was explosive and fan base was getting excited and like this is cool, and we saw the same stuff from Josh Dobbs the summer before. So
Yeah.
when it was announced that DTR would be the guy, be the backup, okay, cool. And then boom, you threw him out there. And then the fact that they took him out, I see at that point I'm thinking, well, just stick with the kid. So now they've not stuck with it. So now it's like, all right, so they're gonna put him out there against you guys and Mike and veteran coach and Mike Tomlin. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, are they gonna pull the plug on him again? Are they gonna if he looks like crap or can't complete a pass in the first half, are they gonna insert PJ Walker in the third quarter?
And
Um,
that would be pretty devastating for the young quarterback when you think
is it
about it.
right?
And
Yeah.
yeah, like, I think that would be pretty demoralizing to have a week's worth of prep and then have the rug pulled out from under you again. And I think that when you think about the Browns, and they're still going to be in football games, and they're going to be in football
Mhm,
games for two reasons. Number
mhm,
one is their defense is still very, very good. And number two is their running game is actually very, very good. And what's
mhm.
the best way for a young, inexperienced quarterback to stay afloat? Run the freaking football. And the Steelers defense has been gashed by the run this season. They are
Now
not this is
that
not,
is one. Well, and
don't
that's
mix
one
it up.
area
Yeah.
I agree with Jeff. The other part of that with DTR, I mean, PJ Walker is a pretty good scrambler too, but DTR, similarly to Deshaun, I think that the way the offense is set for Cleveland, that run game includes
Mhm.
running the quarterback. And I think probably the front office and the coaching staff, and probably are leaning toward the fact that DTR probably has a little bit more, spring,
Yeah.
and that could be a real weapon, like Deshaun was, and so that's another, I think, factor in why they decided to go this way. I think Cleveland, like that first game against you guys, was from the get go. I mean, we're making mistakes,
Yeah.
and we've got to avoid that because, like you said, the Browns have other parts of their team, like the run game. It's been an interesting topic here in Cleveland with the run game because we've been so used to Nick Chubb, so spoiled that anything it I've been critical of people who've been critical of our run game up through this season, saying how 2 or 3 yard averages aren't going to cut it in the NFL. And I'm like, well, wait a second. They're running. I get that. There's the guys are running 2 or 3 yards at a time, but they might burst one for 40 or 50. And the team has been averaging like what 150, 160 yards per game. So I don't. These guys are in the NFL, and the Browns are winning, and they're 6-3. So I think the Browns' running game is cutting it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You know, you look at the tandem of Kareem Hunt back in Cleveland, who they signed after Chubb was injured. Is the other one Ford? I think is his name.
Jerome Ford.
Yeah, that's a good tandem, and so I think that the Cleveland Browns have found their way. Not that anything is going to be relative to Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is a one of a kind type back in terms of his effectiveness and his overall capabilities. However, I think that they can run the ball, and like you said, DTR might be more of what they want for their system, and that's why they're going in that direction. But let's talk about the defense here. We've talked about the offense a lot. The defense. Myles Garrett is having a special season. And I'm sure that there's right now, as I said that, there's people that are listening to this podcast, Steelers fans, that are trying to find my address because they're going to storm my front door with pitchforks and torches because, Lord forbid, I say that Myles Garrett is a good player. He is a great player. Everyone wants to pit him and TJ Watt together. I don't know why we just can't say both are really, really good at what they do. Now, Myles Garrett's not alone, though. Like there's other players on this defense that are really showing out. Who are some of those guys that maybe weren't talked about a lot at the beginning of the season, but are having great years on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, the defensive line in itself, I mean, are feeding off of, and I think that's what's made everything like you talk about with Myles Garrett being a really great player. He's having one of the most outstanding. He's probably his best season of his career, and but it's just he's enjoying it so much because other players, he's doing so much, he's drawing attention that it's the way that they designed the defense, that Delvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, Jordan Elliott, all these big guys on the interior are feeding off of the fact that they're plugging up those gaps. They're having great seasons. You look in the linebacking crew, you have Anthony Walker back, who missed most of last season. Taki has been solid. Even Tony Fields, who's a linebacker for the Browns, he's been around for 3 or 4 seasons. He comes in and does what he needs to do. You got JOK, Jeremiah Usa-Cormoro, who's having a hell of a season. The thing is, the Browns defense is so animated this year. I mean, that's where Jim Schwartz, the Browns defensive coordinator, has really, really instilled this sort of, he's telling these guys that they need to be celebrating. Like he's making them celebrate.
Yeah.
So they've come up with all these creative sort of crazy, sort of displays of euphoria, excitement.
For sure.
And Steeler fans will probably not like that, but
Well, no, but if the Steelers do it, then they love it. So it's just because.
Well, it was nice to see even somebody like Greg Newsome last week. He got a pick six. Kids from Northwestern, never had even I think maybe he had one interception at Northwestern. Been with the team now for 3 years. One of our best cornerbacks. But he doesn't intercept passes, and he got one of those tip balls. I tell you, the Browns have been involved in so many games where the balls are tipped or hit off helmets. And there was another one of those, and Greg Newsome was able to bring that one back for a touchdown, which really helped the Browns, win that game. So those are just a few players that have just been outstanding. Yep.
So this game, when I think about this, and I normally bring up the spread, and I'm not because it's going to change so dramatically.
What is it right now? What was it?
Last I saw was the Steelers were getting 2. And that was even
Really?
after they announced the quarterback situation and that DTR was starting.
Really?
But I do a
Okay.
gambling podcast for Fans First,
Uh-huh.
and my buddy Pez, who's the guy who makes the picks, he said if you can jump on that line, like if you're a Steelers fan, you think that them getting 2 is a good safe bet, do it
Yeah.
quick because it's going to change real quick. He thinks it's going to
Right.
move to maybe even a pick'em game.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
even swing to the Steelers being favored. So
Yeah.
there could be. So let's throw that out the window. Who cares
Okay.
about that stuff? But I think this could be one of those low scoring AFC North grudge match
I
games that
agree.
is going to
Yeah.
get. It's not going to be
12
ugly from a
12 to 9
physicality
or
standpoint.
yeah, 12 to
So
10
yeah,
or
I was going to ask you, like, not that I need a score prediction right now, but what are you thinking about this game? If you have a score in mind, give it to me. If not, like,
right
I'm just
there. Yeah,
curious.
I think well, okay. I'll give you I mean obviously I'm gonna take the brownies.
Yeah.
Let's go Browns 16, Steelers 10.
Oh
16 to
gosh,
10.
that would just be so boring.
And I think it's gonna be like a couple field goals and then let's go 3 field goals and a touchdown. I think they'll
Okay.
get in. I think the Browns kicking game, Dustin Hopkins I tell you, he's been a life changer for the Browns. He's a huge factor in why the Browns are where they're at. And how Kevin Stefanski, good old steady Eddie, has managed that kicking game this year and not been as aggressive with his fourth down play calls. And he's really grown on a lot of people, including myself, as far as his coaching talents and how he's managing this team. So when you have a kicker too that can kick it, I mean, Dustin Hopkins hasn't missed a field goal beyond 50 yards, knock on wood.
Yeah.
Yet I think he's 7 for 7 or something like that.
Wow. That's
Yeah, and
fantastic.
he's
That's
not going to mess
fantastic.
up against you guys. So
Well, you just jinxed him. I'm glad you did. Okay.
nah, I didn't. You can play that back later. Yeah, that'll be a good one.
All right, John. I really appreciate you taking the time
Yep.
again to be on the show. Why don't you go ahead and plug where they can find anyone can find you on social media? Maybe they want to laugh at you for things, or if they want to hear you all crying and moaning over the news of Deshaun Watson, where they can find your podcast.
Well, the Fanatical Elves Network, part of your Fans First Sports Network, have been
Yes, sir.
great supporters and helped us launch this. And I telling our fans and the people that follow us on Apple, Spotify, all those platforms, YouTube. I mean, we have been growing leaps and bounds every month. Our downloads this month were 30-40% over what we did last month. The month
Fantastic.
before that we're 30-40. So we're not where you guys are at, but we've got a great group of guys that are contributing. We've got shows every day of the week, multiple shows now every day of the week. And so you can find me. I'm on the X or the Twitter on it's my handle at John Suchan, JOHNSUCHAN. I write for the Fanatical Elves Network, part of your group at Fans First. You can
Yep.
find articles there. I also write for Northeast Ohio Sports Insiders today, a group that does a lot of great coverage up in Northeastern Ohio. And what else? I think that's enough, right? No,
Yeah, I think you covered it. Yeah. Now, John, thank you for your time. Enjoy the game. I'm sure we'll be talking soon. Maybe just playoffs. I don't know. We'll see. We will see. I don't know.
Okay.
All right, John. Have a good rest of your
Thank
day.
you.
Good weekend. Enjoy the
Yeah.
game. We'll talk to you.
Thank you.